왜 지랄들이 아침부터?
씨마 이씨. 없어요? 찌른다.
위험해. 너 말이야. 빨리 와야지.
In a quiet stretch of coastline, two men named Tom and Sham were running a dirty little operation. They had been quietly stealing drugs from Japan and smuggling them into South Korea, making fast money, climbing fast, and leaving a trail of corpses behind them. But what they didn't realize was that a sharp-eyed officer named Young had already been tracking every move they made. When Tom realized Young was closing in, he panicked and beat the officer brutally, hoping that would bury the threat. But the man behind the entire operation, a polished, dangerous figure named Ju Sung-chul, wasn't going to let a half-finished job hang over his head. He finished what Tom started. He killed Officer Jung with his own hands and ordered his men to dump the body into the cold Black Sea. The case file closed before it was ever opened. The next morning, Ju Sung-chul called Tom in and laid out the next move. A meeting was scheduled. 20 kilograms of a new synthetic drug called Hyper were going to be handed off, and Tom was supposed to manage the trade. What neither of them understood that morning was that the man who would unravel their entire empire had just woken up in his apartment across the city. His name was Seok-do, a Seoul detective built like a wall and twice as immovable. On his way to the station, he ran into a group of thugs, shoving an old man around in the street. He gave them a calm warning. Just stop. Walk away. They didn't. They probably wished they had. In under 10 seconds, all of them were lying on the pavement, and Seok-do straightened his jacket and kept walking. Some men collect badges. Seok-do collects bruised knuckle. When he reached the station, his team called him over. A young woman had just fallen from a hotel window in Gangnam. Suicide was the early theory. Seok-do didn't buy it. He drove straight to the scene with Detective Kim. CCTV footage showed the woman entering the hotel with two men, but only one walked back out. Before checking in, she had been at a place called Club Orange, and that was where Seok-do decided to start pulling threads. By the time the autopsy came back, the picture had darkened. The girl's blood was loaded with something the lab hadn't seen before: Hyper. A new synthetic drug, far more potent than cocaine or heroin, cooked in Japan and starting to leak into Seoul's nightlife. The captain phoned him with a clean offer: hand the case to narcotics and walk away. Seok-do refused. A girl was dead. He wasn't dropping it. That night, he and Kim dressed up like clubgoers and walked into Orange. They didn't quite fit in. Two girls at the door whispered that they looked more like thieves than regulars. But Seok-do had old contacts in the underworld, and one of them slipped him past the velvet rope. Inside, he spotted a few kids upstairs taking pills. A guard tried to block his path. One clean blow later, the guard was on the floor. Seok-do walked up to a young buyer and bent down with surprising gentleness. "Focus on school, son. Don't ruin your life for this." Then he turned cold again and went after the supplier. When the dealer wouldn't talk, Seok-do moved straight to the source, the club's owner. He cuffed him on the spot. But what looked like a routine drug case was about to drag him into something far darker than any homicide file had ever shown him. Meanwhile, across town, Tom met with a man called President Jin and offered him the full 20 kilos of Hyper at a price so low it made Jin suspicious. Still, the deal was too good to ignore. He paid a deposit and walked off, already sensing something off about the whole arrangement. Back at the interrogation, Seok-do worked on the club owner. The man played innocent, shouting about police brutality. Seok-do stayed calm and quietly told the room it was time to clean up. The officers around him started rearranging chairs, and for a few convenient seconds, the camera in the corner caught a wall instead of the suspect. When the recording resumed, the owner's tone had changed completely. He gave Seok-do a name: Hiroshi, a Japanese dealer running Hyper through the club, paying him to look the other way. Seok-do ran with it. He raided President Jin's home, knocked aside a bodyguard who had no business standing in his way, and started shaking loose more names. The trail kept pointing back to the Yakuza. Then the captain phoned. He had located Hiroshi's hideout and was already moving in with his squad. Seok-do told him to be careful. The captain didn't wait. The raid worked. Hiroshi and his men were captured. 20 kilograms of Hyper were recovered. For one brief, beautiful moment, the case looked solved. Then, on the road back to the station, a car slammed into the police transport at full speed. Officers were thrown around like dolls. 3 masked men climbed out, opened the back, and shot Hiroshi where he sat. They grabbed all 20 kilos and disappeared into the morning traffic. One of the detectives, Tyson, was rushed to the ICU, and those 3 men? They were Ju Sung-chul and his crew. These weren't ordinary criminals. They were wearing badges underneath their jackets. Ju Sung-chul stormed into Tom's office and beat him bloody. The drugs had originally belonged to President Jin through his Yakuza connection. Ju Sung-chul and his crew had stolen them in the first place. Tom was supposed to repackage and deliver them to Jin so Ju could close the loop and pocket the money. But Tom had panicked, hesitated, and now the whole operation was hanging by a thread. Ju Sung-chul gave him one more chance. Repack the drugs. Tomorrow we deliver. Tom went straight to a quiet, careful man named Yang who specialized in packaging. He told him Hiroshi was dead and he was taking over the supply. Yang nodded the way a man nods when he knows he can't say no. At the hospital, Ma Seok-do sat at Tyson's bedside as the machines hummed quietly. The case had stopped being about a dead girl in a hotel. Now it was personal. Just then, a young officer named Dong-yu approached him with a confession of his own. The dead girl had been connected to his missing senior officer Jung. Jung had been chasing Hyper off the books, and now he had vanished. The trail of the drug had passed through the Yakuza and a Korean group called White Shark, taken down 2 years earlier. But someone new had picked up where White Shark left off. Ma Seok-do listened, and every piece slid into place. Whoever had killed Officer Jung was using the Yakuza supply line. The Garana police drug team was officially handling it. He drove straight there. He walked into the office. He stared into the eyes of the squad in charge. It was Ju Sung-chul. Ma Seok-do didn't know it yet, but the man standing across the desk from him was the same man who had ordered Officer Jung's death. He started questioning Ju Sung-chul carefully. The corrupt officer shut him down with the practiced calm of a man who had done this before. "This case isn't yours, detective. Walk away." Ma Seok-do's fist was already curling when Kim grabbed his arm and pulled him outside. "Not here, not yet." The next lead took them to a smug car dealer and club owner named Lalton, who tried to throw a punch the moment Ma Seok-do walked in. The mistake lasted about half a second. When Lalton came back to consciousness, Ma Seok-do asked him quietly, "Who's selling drugs through your club?" Lalton showed him photos of Tom and Yang and said, "Those two, only those two." While Ma Seok-do was tightening his net, another player was already in motion. President Jin had figured out his drugs were never coming. He sent his most loyal enforcer, a sword-carrying executioner named Ricky, on the next flight to Seoul. Ricky's orders were simple: recover the drugs, kill everyone who touched them. Ju Sung-chul still believed he could clean this up. He waited at the meeting point, ready to deliver the drugs to President Jin. Tom never showed. Then the phone rang. Tom told him Jin had figured everything out, that killers were coming, and that he was going underground with the merchandise. Ju Sung-chul barely held himself together long enough to look Jin in the eye and ask for 2 more days. Then he went hunting. Ricky moved first. He stormed Tom's office with a squad of armed men. Bodies hit the floor, but Tom wasn't there. He had hidden the drugs somewhere else and disappeared. Meanwhile, Ma Seok-do dragged Yang into Lalton's club to ask the only question that mattered. "Where's Tom?" Yang folded immediately and gave him a location. Ma Seok-do sped there, but Ricky was already on the scene, dragging Tom into a car. Ma Seok-do tried to cut them off, but Ricky's vehicle slammed into his and tore out of the lot before he could blink the blood from his eyes. Ju Sung-chul arrived a few minutes later. Too late. Ricky took Tom to an empty warehouse and started carving information out of him. "Where are the drugs? Tell me where you hid them." Tom refused. It was the last decision he ever made. Ricky killed him on the floor. When Ma Seok-do later learned that Tom was dead, he went straight back to Yang. This time he didn't shout. He sat the trembling little man down and spoke to him almost like a brother. "Relax. Just talk." Yang stammered out that he only packaged the drugs, that he had no part in the killing. Ma Seok-do slid Officer Jung's photo across the table. "Who killed this man?" Yang hesitated. Ma Seok-do glanced at Kim and said softly, "He won't open up like this. We'll have to spend a little on him." Yang understood the implication instantly. He started speaking faster than he had ever spoken in his life. "The Yakuza couldn't have done it alone," he said. "Someone Korean had to be helping them. He just didn't know who." Ma Seok-do already knew. He just didn't want to be right. Yang understood Japanese, which turned out to be the missing key. Together, they began stitching the fragments of names and contacts into a picture. And the picture said one thing clearly. Tom had another partner, somebody untouched, somebody invisible, somebody inside. The real mastermind was still sitting behind a desk, watching the case slip through his fingers and quietly preparing his next move. Then Dong-yu called. Officer Jung's body had been found in the water. The coroner said something nobody wanted to hear: he had been thrown in while still breathing. The next morning, Ju Sung-chul's people stormed Tom's old office searching for the missing drugs. Ricky got there first. He cut them down without a word. Ju Sung-chul, now running out of options, walked into President Jin's compound empty-handed. The conversation went badly. Ju Sung-chul lost his temper and beat one of Jin's enforcers to death with his bare hands. Then he smiled and asked for more time. "I'll bring your drug." Jin let him live, but the clock was now in red. Ma Seok-do reached Tom's ransacked office a few hours later. A worker mentioned that Officer Jung's old partner had stopped by at 2 in the morning, searching for something. The thread tightened. Ma Seok-do drove straight to the Garana station and confronted Ju Sung-chul again. This time, when the corrupt officer tried to dismiss him, Ma Seok-do made sure his entire crew understood what a beating from him actually felt like. He still didn't have hard proof, but he was close enough now to taste it. On the way out, Yang mentioned that the Yakuza used to operate from a place called Yard. Maybe the drugs are hidden there? Ma Seok-do drove for it immediately. He wasn't the only one. Ricky was already inside. Ma Seok-do walked in and chaos followed him. He lifted men by their collars and demanded answers. Nobody had the drugs. But while ripping the place apart, he found something, a plain plastic keycard with the word Lucky stamped on it. He paused, stared. It clicked. This wasn't just a card, it was a locker key. Back at the suspected hideout, Kim found a sealed hatch leading underground. Ma Seok-do tore the lock off with his hands. The basement was a full-scale hyper-laboratory, bubbling pots, vacuum sealers, finished bricks ready to ship. In the corner sat a reinforced safe. Ma Seok-do tried to crack the code. When that failed, he tore the door off its hinges. Inside the safe, nothing but bags of salt. The real drugs weren't in any safe. He realized it almost instantly. They had been packaged in waterproof bundles and submerged in the harbor outside, hung underwater, hidden in the one place no one would think to look. He pulled them up himself. Now came his trap. Ma Seok-do brought Lawton in and used him as bait. He made Lawton call Ju Sung-chul and tell him the drugs were in his hands. Ju Sung-chul didn't believe it at first and hung up. So Lawton sent a photo. This time, Ju Sung-chul bit. He named a meeting point. But Ju Sung-chul wasn't going to walk in alone. He went to Ricky and pretended to offer cooperation. "I can get to the drugs. Come with me." He sent Ricky to the meeting in his place, suspecting the whole thing might be a setup. Every man in the city thought he was about to outsmart the others. Only one of them had read the board correctly. When Lawton arrived at the meet and saw Ricky instead of Ju Sung-chul, his face drained. Ma Seok-do moved to cover him, but Ricky's men had the angle. They knocked him unconscious. When Ricky opened the bag, all he found inside was salt. He understood instantly. Ju Sung-chul had set him up. Meanwhile, Kim and Dong-yu were waiting nearby in a car holding the real drugs. Ju Sung-chul appeared from the shadows. He overpowered them and walked off with the bag. Ricky's men dragged Ma Seok-do to a second location, tied him to a chair, and started working him over for the location of the merchandise. Ricky watched it all with the patience of a man who enjoyed his job. Then his phone rang. It was Ju Sung-chul. "I've got the drugs. You were easier to fool than I expected." Ma Seok-do lifted his head slowly. He cracked his neck, and then he stood. What followed inside that warehouse was not a fight. It was a demolition. Men crashed into walls. Pipes broke. Ricky tried to use his sword, and for the first time in his career, his sword wasn't enough. Ma Seok-do beat him until there was nothing left of the Yakuza fixer but a body on the concrete. Outside, Ju Sung-chul was already preparing to disappear. He had a car packed and a ticket to China waiting. He climbed into the driver's seat. And then Ma Seok-do appeared in his rearview mirror. Ju Sung-chul tried to run. He didn't get far. Ma Seok-do had slipped a tracking phone into the drug bag long before the trap was set. He had known exactly where the money would crawl to in the end. Ju Sung-chul had spent his entire life building a fortress out of corruption. Ma Seok-do tore it down with his hands. The corrupt officer begged. He offered half the money. He offered to disappear. He offered everything a desperate man can offer. Ma Seok-do didn't blink. He finished it the only way he ever finishes things, with one final blow the city would feel for years. When it was done, the team gathered for the first time in weeks without a case file open on the table. Tyson woke up. Kim laughed. Dong-yu finally smiled. The hyper ring was burned to the ground. The drug would never reach the streets the way it almost had. The story wasn't over. It was only beginning.